Hey guys, we'll start in a few minutes. If anybody shows up. Got a few here. We'll still wait about 5 more minutes. So we've got 10 so far. It's better than nothing. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. I'll give you a few extra bonus points just for being here.
Awesome sauce.
No problem.
Thank you, Professor.
It's no problem because, I mean, you took the effort to be here, so I'm gonna add, like I did last time on that, I'm gonna add 5 points to that little 15-point quiz if you do it tonight. Those that watch the recording later can still get the 3 codes and the 15 points, but they won't be eligible for the extra 5 points. It's not a lot, but every little bit adds up. And guys, tonight, well, I'll do a screen share in a minute here. It's kind of a little bit of a repeat of last time, a little bit of new information. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. You don't have to do anything. So you'll be able to see what I see, kind of a white screen here. Make sure I don't close everything out. Now, if you notice, I'm in this section O2. You may not be in section O2. You might be in one of the other 2 sections. It makes no difference. They're done all the same. The tests are the same. So if we go down here, once again, and I know I showed you guys this, but once again, let me find it. All recorded Zoom meetings, current and past. basically this semester. So I went to the class, the homepage, went to modules, went to all recorded Zoom meetings, current and past. This is today. This is the one from last week. There was no quiz associated with it, but it has hints on the test. So if I click on this, now sometimes students don't click on it and they say, I can't find it. Here's the meeting right here. You know, if there's no link to a test, you can watch it on YouTube. You can go to the actual Zoom website and watch it. It has a transcript on the right-hand side, which is not that accurate because of my Texas accent. It misinterprets a lot of what I say. Or you can watch the actual video right here. You can even download it and keep it. I don't know why if you want to, but you can if you want. But that's, so for tonight, like February the 15th, either later tonight, probably tomorrow morning, then I'll add the link here and here, tweak the video, add it right here, and you can watch the video. Now, going back to this, right here, all recorded Zoom meetings. If you click on this last one, it says all Q&A, test information, other meetings. This is an older one, September 21st, 2020. It's a couple years old. If you click on that, that actually will take you to, well, I'll do it. Let me click on it and see what it does. That actually takes you to a recorded Zoom meeting from a couple of years ago. The transcript's over here. If you play that, it'll have, you scroll down through it a little bit. Sometimes those things start early, but like you don't have to sit there and watch the whole thing.
Two words, 14R1.
I know, see, I showed this on the last one too. I'm actually gonna end this. I showed a little bit of the test on that.
Hormesis? What is hormesis?
Hold on a minute. I'm getting a little bit lost here. That was right here. Now I showed a little bit of test number 1 on there, which you could actually print out and answer part of it if you want. It might be a little bit different than the one I did last time, February the 1st. That'll take you to the same website, different video. No, that takes you to YouTube. This takes you to the same website, different video, or you can watch it here. And I also showed a little bit more of the test. Now remember, the test, the first major grade coming up is the test. So let's go to modules. I think it's next week. Let me double check. I don't think it's this week. We're in module 5. There's not much to complete. This is a really short video, which I'm going to talk about it a little bit, called necrosis versus hepatosis. This is the little quiz we'll take tonight, which you can get 15 points on. I'm going to give you 5 extra. So when we finish here, you have to take it right afterwards, because I have people sometimes emailing me a day or two later saying, oh, I was there. That's a little bit too late, because you got to do it right after the meeting. Otherwise, anybody can say that. And then everybody would be getting the extra points. So that's this week. All you really have to do is this little quiz tonight. This is a really short video. It's like about 8 minutes. And there's a little 10-question quiz, which is really simple at the end that you take. It's worth 20 points. But then next week, that's the first big grade. That's test number 1. It even tells you on the test, chapters 1 through 3, spotlight A and B. Those are the 5 study guides that if you have done, right there with you, with the answers on them, when you take the test, you'll be in good shape. You can use those and the book, anything you want. I wouldn't use other stuff. It's too confusing. You just need the book, spotlights A and B. Now, here's the situation you're going to run into. Let me take this off screen share for a minute. Without messing it up, if I can. Okay, here's the situation you'll run into when you take the test. If you're taking the test on the same computer that you're using the ebook on, you need to probably do a split screen. It depends on how big your screen is. Like, for example, on mine, I can split it. This is a wide screen. I can have a screen here. I can have a screen here. I could have 3 or 4 screens, but it's easier to do it that way rather than try to have like 2 computers. Because I mean, you can, and that way you can kind of look through the book if you need it. You won't need the book that much. If you have the study guides done, you really won't need the book hardly at all. It might help a little bit, but not as much as you might think.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
On some of the study guides, it has questions that say all of these are true except. Do you have any recommendations on that? Because it doesn't really give us any answers.
Yeah, I know what you're saying on that. And that's actually by design. There are a handful of questions like that. It'll say which of the following is a carbohydrate, and it doesn't give you choices for answers. On questions like that, for example, let me pull up, let me do a screen share again and show the study guide. I know what you're talking about. And let me pull up one of the study guides. Well, actually, I don't even need to download it. I have them over here. Give me 1 second. Okay, we'll just look at the first one. Study guide, chapter 1, the science and scope of nutrition. Okay, so this is a study guide that you download. When it says stuff like, I'm going to briefly go through this. A nutrient that cannot be made by the body in sufficient quantities that must be obtained from the diet is a, now, I know people want choices like A, B, C, D, true, false, etc. But if you get a question like this, I would just look up the definition of a nutrient and just write out the definition of a nutrient. I know there's a handful of questions that you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's one at the bottom of that first page.
This one right here?
Scroll back up.
Oh, the very bottom?
Scroll back up to the first page, and it says all of these are true about a carbohydrate.
Right.
Except.
Yeah, I see this. Okay. I know what you're talking about, and there's a few of them like this. All I can say on a question like this is just write in the definition of a carbohydrate. And remember, I can tell you the answer to that. A carbohydrate is just a plant. Remember we talked about, rather than use the word sugar, just write in plant. Now that doesn't mean on the test that's going to be the answer, but it's going to be either A, B, C, D on the test, and you'll be able to say, hey, which one of these is not a plant? You see what I mean? It might be bacon, it's not a plant, blah, blah, blah. And then corn, all of a sudden it's a plant. So just write in the definition of carbohydrate is like a plant. This one right here, sometimes you can tell that they're true, false. It says, according to the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, it's a long word, the majority of Americans are meeting recommendations for whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. Just by the way that's phrased, I can tell you that's false, because most people don't get enough of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. But that's actually in the book somewhere. there's several of them. Here's another one. Fat soluble vitamins include, you say, well, what are the choices? Well, in that case, I would just write down the names of the fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K. So however the question is phrased, you'll have some kind of inkling as to what the answer might be. Now, a few of them are difficult to do that on. The reason I do it that way, because literally if I put the answers on here, I mean, it would just be literally just a take-home test. I mean, if every single one was on here, you wouldn't even need to take the test. You would just need to turn in the study guide. This way, it forces people to read a little bit about it. They may not know exactly, but you can write down as much as you want. Like, let's just take this one. Minerals are non-essential nutrients and provide 4 kilocalories per gram. Minerals. Do minerals have calories? Yes or no? Can you live on minerals? Remember, minerals are part of the earth, like sodium, potassium, chloride. Minerals don't have any calories. So the answer to this is false. The only foods that have calories are fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. And you get another one here, like nutrients are classified into macronutrients and micronutrients according to the book. All of the following are macronutrients except, well, in the book, they'll have a list of 5 or 6. It might be a few more, I don't know, because of what macronutrients are. Just write them down right here. Here are the macronutrients according to the book. The reason I do, once again, I do that because when you put things in micronutrients and macronutrients, the same, like you're saying, let me go back, stop the screen share a minute. You're saying there's only 2 classifications of nutrients, macro and micro, and that's not really correct. That's like saying there's 2 groups of people, big people, large people. There's in between everything, but books always do that. They categorize things. All of these questions come from the book. So even though it may be phrased kind of weird, that's from the book. It's phrased exactly like that in the book somewhere. Now, you can say by the time you do the study guides, you can say, well, I can only answer 90% of them. The other 10% I couldn't figure out. That's still pretty good because when you take the test, you basically have 90% of it done. And remember, it's not fill in the blank, it's A, B, C, D. And some of them are just true, false. And so you'll have a pretty decent chance. I have a lot of students make A's on the test. If they do the study guides, sometimes it'll tell me how long students took on it. You have 100 minutes to take it. I have some students that take 20 and 30 minutes to do the whole test. Now, I expect you to do that, but 100 minutes, that's 1 minute per question. Doesn't sound like much, but if you have most of the answers already done, it's actually more time than you need. And remember, you get 2 chances on the test. So if you say, oh, I didn't do that well on the first chance, then, take it another time. That's why I wouldn't wait until like this Sunday afternoon of next week to take it, because it's due Sunday at midnight. Take it, in the middle of the week. And if you did okay, then don't worry about it. You don't need to take it again. So it's, that's why averages right now are, somebody says, are we taking it live? Or you take it on your own. Remember, everything is done on your own. The assignments are all on your own. They open up Sunday at midnight, and they close Sunday at midnight for the upcoming week. That week's assignments are due by the end of the week. I wouldn't wait till the end of the week to take it, but you actually could. But it's not as bad as you might think. That's why averages are really high now. I have people 120%, 130%. You say, oh, wow. Well, I want you to get all these bonus points because the test, that's the hardest part of the class. The tests aren't that hard, but I have people sometimes that'll say, I have 126 average, 120% 6 average, and I made a 92 on the test, and yet my average went down. I said, well, of course it went down. You had 126%. It's obviously going to do that. So if you have all these extra points, then you have sort of a cushioning for your grade. And there's more of those coming up. I've actually had people have C test averages, they average C's on the test all the way across, they still make an A in the class. Because maybe even a D. I don't know if you could have a D average and still make an A, you could, I doubt it, probably be a B. But it depends on how many bonus assignments you did and things like that. However, people that don't do any of the bonus assignments and then, they end up making C's on the test, and sometimes they end up in the class with a C. Those are all to enhance your grade, to alleviate the fears of the test a little bit. Most of this class, most of the time, is just working those study guides. I know those take the most amount of time, because I'm not in class lecturing on them. And once again, you can get help with other students every Wednesday, I can't remember the time that I set, but if you go to conference Zoom, you can click on Wednesday, other people working on the study guides, you can email them to each other, you can compare them. You can message people in Canvas and get a hold of them and say, you work a couple, I'll work a couple, and we'll exchange them. Or you can work them all yourself if you want. It's going to take longer. But I mean, that's just sort of up to you. So I want to give you the first code for tonight. So if you have a pen, write this down. It's 356. 356. And when I end the meeting, you can take the little test and get your 15 points. Then I'll add 5 extra to it for being here. It won't take that long tonight to go over all this stuff. I want to discuss a little bit. I can't, because the politics of everything now, especially medicine and health. I've actually had a couple of students ask me about COVID. Actually research it, know quite a bit about it, more than you might realize. But for certain political reasons, I can't say certain things, which you probably know all that. But I don't mind delving into it a little bit, as far as, because this is nutrition and nutrition is related to health. And the last video you watched about the immune system is all about being healthy, boosting your immune system to be able to fight off viruses, disease, and cancer and things like that. It's amazing how they don't talk about that kind of stuff, yet that's one of the healthiest things you can do. In my opinion, it's more healthy than getting a vaccine. And I'm not saying you shouldn't get a vaccine, but boosting your immune system fights off any kind of virus. Doesn't mean you won't get it, but if you get it, it'll probably be less severe. And studies show that fasting boosts your immune system. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. So it's one of the most anti-cancer things you can do, and antiviral things you can actually do. But that's not the nature of what people talk about. It's just surprising. It's I find it odd, but doctors aren't in that business. They're in the business of treating people, not really preventing this disease. They're in the business of treating the disease once you get it. I think it's better not to get the disease in actually the first place. The vast majority of people in a couple of studies that I've read actually had COVID, and they never realized it because they didn't get very sick, especially younger people. They might have a little sniffle or a little cold and realize, well, I had COVID, because they were young and healthy and build up antibodies, and never realized that they actually had the antibodies circulating around in their system, which are more powerful than the vaccine, actually. They're way more powerful than the vaccine. I'm not saying don't get it, but, and I'm not saying go out and get sick either. I'm not advocating that, but regardless of what anybody may tell you, including me, any official, any doctor on TV, any so-called expert, nobody should call themselves an expert, including me, because an expert means you know everything there is to know, and nobody knows that. I don't care what they say, this is an experimental vaccine. It's only been around for a couple of years, and it's experimental. Nobody knows what the 5 or 10-year effects will be of the vaccine. It's probably safe, but there's no guarantee on any of that. It is experimental. and they kind of rushed it through. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Maybe they needed to because of the severity of what was going on. So you make up your own mind as an individual. Don't let anybody tell you what you must and must do, including me. Research it, find out, make a decision what's good for you, your family, your kids, and that kind of stuff. Because I find it odd that people just blindly follow other people, whatever they say, based upon, I think, based upon just what other people's titles are, or their positions are, how many books they've written, or how much they come across as knowing something. Then they get a lot of the people to follow them. They may or may not be correct. So you just research things. I want to spend, and like I said, if you have any questions, if you ask me, like, should I get the vaccine? I can't really answer that because I could get in trouble for answering that because I'm a lot older than you guys. So I'm not going to tell you whether I have or haven't. I'll let you guess. I'll give you a hint. Because of my nutrition habits, I haven't had a cold or a flu in 40 years. So, and I've never had the flu vaccine either. So, and yet I've never had the flu or a cold. So I don't think that, I think that's heredity, and I think that's lifestyle. So it says, what if we don't want to get, are we still able to join classes at least online? Yeah, of course. I mean, this class is all online. I believe Valley, where it's, if you have a hybrid class that meets in person, aren't they requiring you to get the vaccine by sometime in March? Does anybody know that? I don't know. I think they told students they have to be vaccinated to be on campus in March. Yeah, somebody said March the 11th. Wow, I wonder why they chose that day. Anybody know what's significant about March the 11th, that day? Oh, but it's for summer. You have to be vaccinated by March 11th to go to summer school. Brenda said that. Okay, thanks. March the 11th. Everybody knows what September the 11th is, right? March 11th, 2011. Does anybody know what happened on that day? It's 11 years ago. The worst disaster as far as money goes in human history happened on that day. It was the earthquake and tsunami in Japan on March the 11th. I knew a couple of people involved with that. That cost more money than the wars, disasters, etc. It was, I think around 30,000 people died. Now, more than that died in the war, but in terms of the damage that was done, anyway, it was just, I thought that was odd. They just chose March the 11th. Anyway, so for tonight, like I said, there's not a huge amount to go over. We kind of did it a little bit last time. You can watch that video. I'm gonna go ahead and give you the second code. So the second code is 362. Okay, the second code is 362. The first code was 356. The second code is 362. I'll give you the third code here in a few minutes when we wrap up. We don't have that much longer. But I want to spend just a few minutes going over, just refreshing your memory about nutrition. That you don't need to write any of this down. Remember it. I think it's on test 3 or 4 coming up. I'm not sure. It might be on the first test in that drop-down box, which we've already looked at. But the 8 components of nutrition, 8 parts of nutrition. Most books will tell you there's 6, there's 8. Just review them. You need to write them down, just put them in your head, because understanding all of nutrition is about this. There are, once again, there are 3 food groups, not 4, not 5. The current USDA guidelines, government lists 5. They list dairy as a food group, and they list something else as a food group. There's not 5, there's only 3. Your body only recognizes 3. That's still up. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's, I don't know who maintains that or why they still believe that. Anyway, there's 3 food groups: fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. These are the foods that contain calories. This is all your body requires: fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. They don't know the amount in terms of percentage wise, like what ratio is best. You can't determine that. And I'm not talking about calories. I'm talking about if somebody said 50% of my calories come from fat, would that be a bad diet? A lot of people would say no. I would say, I don't know. I need more information. The other 50% would come from the other two food groups, but you could be okay. If they said 60% of my calories come from protein, you could still be okay. The other 40% come from the other two. It's how many calories when you add up all three. They recommend that you only need 10% of your calories to actually come from protein. But then again, those that eat more protein tend to lose more weight, et cetera, as long as you have a decent amount of carbohydrates and a decent amount, you have carbohydrates, fats, and a decent amount of fats and some protein. There's no ratio that's exactly right. It's just, you could argue any of them. I can make an argument for any of them. You've heard of the low carb diet, the South Beach diet. It's true, it works. You eat less carbs, you lose weight because carbs are easy to change to glucose, so it keeps your glucose level lower. So that sounds healthy. You've heard don't eat too much fat because fat's high in calories, triglycerides, raises your cholesterol level. Yeah, that's true. You've heard vegans and vegetarians don't eat a lot of protein. They tend to be healthier. That's true. So which one's better? None of them. I mean, it's just, you can't really look at that. Yeah, somebody says there's so many diets. None of them are actually wrong and none of them are actually right. It's the total number of calories that you add up over time that makes a difference. When I say over time, I'm going to emphasize that in this class. And I stand by this statement, and there's tons of research out there. Once again, the more time you have between meals, the healthier you're going to be, even for kids. You can eat, and I'm saying much more than you even realize. Going from 3 meals to 2 is healthy. Going from 2 to 1 is healthy. Going every other day is extremely healthy. Now it's obvious that you need proper amount of calories. You need some fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. You need to eat somewhat healthy. You can't eat McDonald's cheeseburgers all the time, but it's time between meals that makes a difference, because that causes your glucose level once again to oscillate, to go up and down. Oscillation is the key to health. It's the key to everything as far as health goes. And I know this is a little bit of a repeat, but once again, to make your heart stronger, you oscillate your heart rate. You work out, you run, you jog, you walk, it gets high, you rest, it gets low. High, low, high, low. When it's high, you're under stress. Once again, that's called hormesis. Stress creates strength. You make your muscles stronger by lifting weights, working out, walking, etc. That stresses them. Lactic acid buildup, then they rest, you stress them. That's hormesis. When you're under stress, that's hormesis. Adaptation takes place, a lot of things take place, but this happens with nutrition. When glucose level is low, then you're under stress. That's hormesis. Somebody says, when lifting weights, does it help to lose weight or just gain muscle? Well, that's another thing. When I was going to get into proteins, I'm going to get into that in just a second. But going back and talking about on weights, once again, you lift weight, you're under stress, lactic acid burn. We'll go over this when I taught exercise phys. We're going into detail on how muscles actually work. It doesn't, a lot of trainers, they know about the body and stuff, but the actual training part, I don't think they understand, because I don't think they understand hormesis that much. People understand working out, makes you stronger because of hormesis. But once again, you have to have hormesis. So going back on nutrition, when you don't eat for a very period of time, the glucose level drops. That's stress, that's hormesis. And it might give you a headache, you don't feel good, you feel tired, you don't feel like you have energy. That's because you're not used to it. Well, that's hormesis. There's a lot of things that are happening in your body at that time. Cancer cells are dying, unhealthy cells are dying, you're actually losing weight. You're starting to use more ketone bodies, which is healthy. That's actually good for you. It may not feel good, but it is good. So the longer you remain there and then you eat a bigger meal and it goes up, then you're under a little bit of stress because of high glucose, but it goes back down. That's hormesis, that's oscillation. Keeping glucose level flatline like this, where you eat 3 meals a day and it just doesn't go up and down much, or 4 or 5 meals a day where it goes down very little, that's not the way to go. That's avoiding hormesis. It doesn't work like that. It just, you can be somewhat healthy like that, but the more stress you create within reason, the more adaptation takes place. But like I said, once again, when glucose level drops, if you're not used to it and you feel tired, you feel like you're going to pass out, and you could pass out if you're not used to it. Scary, people freak out. But once again, I never heard anybody dying from low blood glucose. Never heard of it. It's probably happened somewhere. When it gets really low, you have so little energy, you will pass out. You just pass out on the couch. You relax, you start breathing again, glucose level goes back up. That's not something you want to do, but that's an extreme reaction to low glucose. Low glucose is not what kills people. That's called hypoglycemia. That's controlled by the hormone glucagon, which is very expensive. You don't need that hormone. Yet they sell it, it's like $700 for one injection. You got to be kidding me. Well, you could just drink a glass of orange juice and the same thing would happen. It's insane. What kills people is high blood glucose. That's diabetes. Diabetes is high blood glucose, not low blood glucose. Diabetes kills people. It leads to damage of the arteries, blurriness, blindness, circulation problems, early death, etc. Well, glucose is high. Eat no matter what type you are, type 1, type 2, type 3, you can even have some type 4. We've talked about it a little bit, it's complicated, but when you don't eat, glucose level drops. Type 1, it goes down really slow, but it does go down. So you don't have to take medication to lower glucose level. You have to just not eat for a period of time to allow it to drop. And some people, it gets really low. If it gets too low, drink some grapefruit juice or something to raise it, but it will go down. Even in type 1 diabetics, which is inherited. So for a diabetic, and not just a diabetic, anybody, to eat breakfast, I just think, to me, that makes no sense at all. You're diabetic and your glucose is high. You're trying to lower it. And when you eat breakfast, you're raising it. It should be already somewhat low in the morning if you didn't eat at night, and you want to eat and raise it right back up. That makes no sense. That's just not the way to go as far as diabetes goes. Diabetes has a lot to do with heredity. It's not just weight. We mentioned this before. You can be overweight and be healthy and not be diabetic. Now, it's better to be ideal weight. But once again, doctors tell you, you gain weight, therefore you got diabetes. That's not correct. It's only correlated with diabetes. Because if weight gain caused diabetes, then everybody overweight would have diabetes, and there are plenty of overweight people that do not have diabetes, and there are thin people that have diabetes. So it can't be a cause effect. The cause effect means it happens every time, not some of the time. It's only correlated with it. So he says, what do you think about fatty liver, something can be removed with different diets? Oh, absolutely. Fatty liver is one of the things that being overweight, people tend to have, although thin people can have it too. The liver is a fascinating organ. It has 500 different functions. It's amazing all the things that the liver does. 500 different functions. It's incredible. But it can actually store fat. It has fat cells in it. Now, most, like our skin, under our skin, we have fat cells, and we have fat cells around the liver, even in the liver, in folds of the liver. We have them in joints. They're all over the place. And when you have extra weight and your cells don't need it, remember, we can overeat, but our cells don't overeat. because cells, you eat too much, glucose level is high. And that's not good because that's diabetes if it stays high for a long period of time. And cells go, whoa, extra glucose. They don't want it. They won't eat it. Thank goodness, they'll die. So glucose circulates around and your body sends it to the liver and converts the glucose to fat, puts the fat back in the bloodstream and in the form of triglycerides. And then the triglycerides are stored in fat cells. Somebody says fatty liver can turn into diabetes. Yes, well, it doesn't really turn into diabetes. It's correlated with diabetes. So what happens is when you overeat and cells don't take it in, all your fat cells take the glucose, which is converted to fat, and store it. So what happens is your liver has fat cells in it, and they store extra glucose, and it creates a bigger liver, hence called fatty liver, which means that you don't function, the liver doesn't function as well. It's correlated to weight, it's correlated to diabetes, it's correlated to many diseases. But that's, every fat cell increases at the same rate and decreases at the same rate. For example, if you haven't eaten in 24 hours, every fat cell in your body is supplying energy for your body. Every single one of them. Now, not much. Now, fat cells don't store glucose. We have to use glucose because like a car uses gasoline. They have fat, goes through the cell wall, circulates around, goes to the liver converts it back to glucose, puts it in the bloodstream, glucose level starts going up. Fat cells are like batteries. They're shrinking just a little bit. Where? Everywhere. Your fingers, your face, your liver, the fat cells in the liver, fat cells in your muscle, fat cells, you name it, everywhere in your body are like little batteries, they're shrinking. So your whole body is shrinking. But that's why weight loss is kind of frustrating because it's so slow. You want to lose it just in the stomach, you can't, because all the fat cells shrink uniformly. Somebody says skipping meals makes you gain weight because your body thinks you're in, I know what you're going to say, in starvation mode. They say that, but that's actually not true. You want your body to think you're in starvation mode. And the term starvation mode, that's what people throw that term around. They don't really know what it means. Not you personally, I'm just saying you've heard it from somebody. There are three terms in nutrition that are really, really misunderstood and misused a lot. And they are appetite, hunger, and starvation. Now, appetite is psychological. I could eat a couple of donuts and I feel like eating a couple right afterwards. That's appetite. My body doesn't really need it because it's already raised glucose level. Your taste buds in your brain are like, yeah, I want some more donuts or want something. That's appetite, psychological. It can come on anytime. It doesn't have anything to do with glucose level. Now, when you don't eat for around 18 to 24 hours, about a day, your glucose level drops enough that hormones are triggered. And the main hormone that causes hunger is called ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hormone that's secreted that triggers the brain's hunger instincts. That's actually hunger. That's when you're actually hungry. You've heard the term hangry, you're angry and hungry. It takes about 18 to 24 hours, closer to 24. I know it sounds strange. So if you eat a full lunch and you say you're hungry at dinner, that's incorrect. That's only 5-6 hours. You're still in appetite mode. You may think you're hungry, but you're actually not. True hunger is completely different than appetite. True hunger, if you have true hunger, you'll like anything. You'll like, oh, I like this. Oh, some fruits, some vegetables. You actually like anything when you're truly hungry. The third term, starvation, it should only be used if you haven't eaten in about 6 weeks to 8 weeks. A normal weight person can go 8 weeks or about 2 months before they'll die from lack of food, about 8 weeks. Some people would kill over after about 6 weeks, Some might not make it a month. I'd be real surprised, but it's 6 weeks is probably the cutoff line. Now, that's starvation. Starvation to me implies death, really bad things happening. That doesn't happen even in a few days. And it doesn't even happen in a week or two. You're still not in the starvation mode. You only reach the starvation mode way later. Almost nobody goes to the starvation mode. You're sort of forced to. You've heard about people with starvation diets. If somebody hasn't eaten in 3 days and they say, I'm starving, they may feel like it, but they're not on the verge of death. They're just extremely hungry. But those terms are used rather loosely. So when you say go into starvation mode, it's that's at the point of death. You go into more of a hunger mode, and that's kind of psychological thing. It's hunger. There's overlap between hunger and appetite, and then hunger and starvation, etc. Weight trainers very often will say, well, I can't, fast because my body will start eating its own muscles, or the body eats itself. This is absurd. It's ridiculous. It's impossible. That it's not happen. Your body does not eat its own muscles. What happens when you lose weight? Fat cells shrink. Muscles have fat cells in them. They shrink. The fat cells, not the muscle. And because the fat cells are supplying energy. You eat a piece of steak, you see some fat in there, that's fat in the muscle. Well, if that cow were fasting, that fat would shrink, which means the piece of steak would shrink, not the actual muscle tissue itself. So it looks like the body's eating its own muscle, but it's using the fat cells in the muscle for energy, which is good because that gives the muscles definition. I've known people that have not lifted weights and they went on the diet, they started dieting, and people will say, wow, you must be lifting weights because look, you're getting this definition and your muscles have definition. That it didn't have to do with lifting weights, it had to do with the fat cells shrinking. And the muscles are starting to define, they all have a certain shape. The fat cells under the skin are shrinking and the muscles are poking through. Now in starvation that happens, but that's a different issue. That's, like I said, that's forced. And that's actually a good thing for that to actually have happen. You lose weight by eating more protein than you do the other two food groups, because protein is harder to change to glucose. So you don't gain as much weight. The Atkins diet is based upon that. It actually works, but it's beneficial. But once again, I mentioned this last time, and I've taught this course, not just this course, but like exercise phys and nutrition courses related to working out and things like that. And I used to believe all the nonsense that was out there in the books. And I can tell you right now, even they've been talking about it during the Olympics. Nutritionists during the Olympics, the US nutritionists, one of them was talking about how eating certain things and eating a certain way would improve performance. That's nonsense. I don't care if she's an MD, a PhD, a registered dietitian, nutritionist for the Olympic teams. Olympic team, US has more qualifications as I do as far as that goes. But when I listened to her talk about nutrition, she didn't know about nutrition. I'm sorry, she just didn't. I don't care if she was on TV or not. Maybe I just teach at a little community college, but that doesn't make any difference. It's what do you know? I can tell you right now, and once again, working out is great. It's weights and cardio, etc. It's not as important as eating right. Eating right is more important than working out. Doing both is beneficial. When I say eating right, I mean eating less often. I'm not talking about so much what you eat, although what you eat makes a difference. There's nothing you can eat, nor take, nor drink, no vitamin, no mineral, no supplement, no protein shake, nothing that builds muscle, that makes you a better athlete, that makes you jump higher, run faster, throw a ball faster, hit a tennis ball better. Food and supplements and nutrients and sports stuff does not have that effect at all. That's a complete lack of understanding when somebody tells you that. It's impossible. What they're really talking about is common sense, which I've mentioned this before. If you're going to run the LA Marathon, work out, run the marathon, do cardio, do a lot of running of marathons so that you're good at running a marathon. And then before you run the marathon, they do what's carbo loading. You eat a lot of pasta, etc. 2 or 3 days before, so you have a lot of energy, so that when you run, you have enough energy to perform as well as you're capable of performing. For athletic competition, you want your glucose level normal or maybe slightly high, so you have a little bit of energy, so maybe you can throw the ball harder, you feel better, you function better. That's being more fit is what makes you a better athlete. It's not eating something before a game or taking something. The only exception, which I've mentioned a little bit, was vitamin B12, which is in energy drinks and sports drinks. That gives you a little bit more energy because it's a water soluble vitamin. It's known for kind of revving up a cell. There's some evidence that if your cells revved up a little bit, then you feel a little bit more energetic. It doesn't really make you more athletic, but it allows you to have more energy to perform at your level, whatever that is. I mean, if you think you're going to eat something that's all of a sudden going to make you throw a baseball 10 miles an hour faster, it's not going to work like that. You can lift weights all you want. It's not going to improve how hard you throw a ball or how fast you run. Weight training doesn't do that. Weight training does not improve vertical jump or horizontal speed. They've actually studied that. Now, it doesn't mean it's bad for you. It's good, it's beneficial, makes you stronger, but it doesn't have that much of an effect on athletic competition. And I've coached in college for years, and I used to believe that, but it doesn't. Now, that doesn't mean like professional football players shouldn't lift weights and work out all the time, or other sports. They should, because that makes them more fit and it makes them stronger. And if you're more fit and stronger, that's what makes you perform better. It doesn't make you faster as far as speed goes. That's more inherent. They've actually studied that in the NBA. The guys that had the smaller legs actually jumped higher than the guys with the thicker, more muscular legs. They had a higher vertical jump. That has to do with the speed of muscle contraction. In reality, it doesn't really make that much difference. There's nothing wrong with doing that other stuff either, and if it makes you feel better and function better, etc. But I just, athletic performance, it's kind of mainly inherited, and then working out and some other factors, many other factors go into play there. That you just can't eat yourself into being an athlete. That isn't, and like athlete, what does that even mean? I mean, if you ask a room full of athletes, what is define athletics? They all define it based upon their sport. Like a baseball player, or how fast can you throw a ball? A distance runner, how fast can you run a mile? Or a sprinter, how fast can you sprint? Or, I mean, there's no real definition of what an athlete is. It's just generic. It's just an opinion. I mean, is a golfer an athlete? In my opinion, no. In my sport, tennis, I've seen tennis players that are great tennis players that I really wouldn't consider good athletes. They're really good in tennis. Now, it helps if you're a really good athlete to be a little bit better. It might help you a little bit better. But then if somebody says, well, how would you define it? I would say athletics, in my opinion, would be just pure speed, kind of like nature, like a 50-meter dash. An animal running from a predator, an animal that's faster than the predator is going to survive. That's athleticism. That's pure speed. Pure speed. You don't have a racket. You don't have a bat. You don't have a ball. Because when you start having those things, then you start having skill. You start introducing skill. And skill and athletics have a little bit of overlap. They're not exactly the same thing. But it's just an argument of semantics. It doesn't really matter. And people will say, well, they're an athlete. So, okay, that's fine. It just depends how you define it. To me, it's more related to health. I'd rather be healthy and fit and be completely uncoordinated and unathletic than the other way around, because the health is what's going to affect you more than your athletic ability, unless you're a professional athlete and you make a living at your sport, etc. Then you could kind of argue it that way. Okay, the last couple of things I want to go over on this, talking about some of the myths that if you've got kids or you've got brothers and sisters, I'm a big believer in this, and I've mentioned this before again. I just think we should be like nature. Never force a kid to eat when they're not hungry, or a person or an adult, period. Never force them to eat when they're not hungry, regardless of the time of day. Because let hunger be your guide, not appetite. Hunger is hormonal. When your ghrelin level gets high enough, you will be extremely hungry. Kids will not starve themselves to death voluntarily. It will not happen, but it's completely possible for them to go a whole day and not be hungry and play and just say, I'm not hungry, I don't want to eat. Even in the evening, that's possible. The next day, they'll probably really be hungry. Let hunger be your guide. Let hunger be the kid's guide. If they want breakfast, fine. But if they don't force them to eat it, thinking that you're doing some good, that they're going to do better on tests, they're going to perform better. That's all nonsense. That does not occur. It reduces, food makes you want to sleep. It does not give you energy immediately afterwards. After you eat, so it says, would it cause anemia if not eating? No, it actually wouldn't. See from Crystal. Anemia, that's another word that's thrown around rather loosely. Anemia, when most people use it, they're talking about iron, an iron anemia. It says, if they want lunch, do we say no? No, if they want lunch, then tell them, yeah, they can have lunch. Let them eat whatever they want. But anyway, going back to anemia. Anemia actually means lack of oxygen. If I cross my leg, like with my foot goes to sleep, it's anemic because the blood flow is slowed down and there's not as much oxygen, it's anemic. If I get on a treadmill and you're breathing hard, you're actually anemic. That's why you're breathing hard, lack of oxygen. You're not necessarily you're not low in iron, you're low in oxygen. You don't need to take an iron pill or you're on a treadmill, you're just anemic. But the term iron deficiency anemia means you're low in iron. And in that instance, you need to take iron, but I'd be real careful. I think I've talked about this before. That's another pet peeve of mine. The two, and guys, we'll about 10 more minutes to wrap this up, but the two are the vitamin people take the most of is calcium. The vitamin that in excess, that when you have too much of, that is the most toxic is calcium. Figure that out. Not calcium, excuse me, it's iron. The mineral that people take the most of is iron. The mineral that's the most toxic when you have too much is iron. It's a disease called hemochromatosis. Yeah, people take it like it's candy. I'm shocked. And the vitamin people take the most of is D. And D is the most toxic of all the vitamins that you can take. And that doesn't mean it's toxic by itself, D3. But if you take D all the time, it's very hard for your body to get rid of extra D. It causes calcium, the absorption of calcium to increase. And that's why people take D with calcium. Doctors will tell you it's good for your bones, but it can actually cause calcification in the arteries, which makes them harder. There's a lot of studies that actually show this. Be real careful. Now, if you take one a day, it's probably not bad. Or if you take 2 a day, it's probably not bad. Somebody says, well, if you take no vitamins at all, that's probably the best thing to do. I would say just eat healthy, eat fruit, make sure you eat fruits and vegetables. If you take a multivitamin rather than a specific one, you'd probably cover all the bases. But be real careful about taking extra iron, especially women. Doctors always put women on extra iron. I'm really surprised because it's very toxic. It's hard for the body to get rid of it. It mimics the disease, like I said, hemochromatosis. I had an uncle that died from it years ago, but that was inherited, not from extra iron. It's just you need it because it's the oxygen carrying component of hemoglobin. It said put my mom on iron pills because of the anemia they said she had. Okay, so Crystal, this is what I would. I'm not an MD, so I'm not going to pass myself off as one, but I do know this area. I can bet your mom had a 12-hour blood test fast. They said she was low on iron. They put her on iron pills. Sometimes they do iron infusions. Studies have shown that if you do a 24-hour fast on iron, if you do a 12-hour fast and you're low, but you continue to fast and go for 24 a whole day, the vast majority of those people that were diagnosed low after 12 hours went back to normal. Well, how does that happen? My doctor said, that's impossible. She doesn't understand nutrition. Iron stored in the bones. All the minerals to keep you alive are in your bones. When it gets low, signals are sent to your bones to release iron into the bloodstream to raise your iron level. That takes 24 hours. So if it's low after 12 and you take extra iron, it's going to go up normally. It may go up to normal. It may go above normal. I would recommend a 24-hour test rather than a 12-hour fasting test. They do 12 hours all the time now instead of 24. I don't know why. Probably because most people won't go 24 hours and not eat. So they started saying, well, 12 hours, 12 hours. The 12 is not the same as 24. But yet people do that. Now, if you take one iron pill a day, is that toxic? No. If they're telling you to take 5 or 6, I'd be very careful about taking too much iron. If you really knew what was going on, it damages the liver, it leads to liver cirrhosis, and at least which is damage to the liver, and that can lead to liver cancer, one of the deadliest cancers there is. That's one of the benefits about time between meals, is you give your liver a break. The liver is always having to filter everything in your body and et cetera. Give it a break and let the liver recover. And if you keep damaging the liver by putting this in there and that in there and forcing it to work, then it doesn't work as well. And then it's called cirrhosis. And if it doesn't correct itself, then you have liver cancer. And so when you have time between meals, your liver gets a break, your kidneys get a break. You still need to drink water, liquids. Your cells get a break. Everything sort of detoxes. Does fatty liver turn into cirrhosis too? Eventually it will. But you can have fatty liver, it leads to some other problems because of the hormones released by the liver. Now remember, when fat cells increase in the body, especially in the liver, they increase and they push on other cells in the liver because they're getting bigger. And those cells don't work as well. And so your liver doesn't work as well. And the liver produces all these enzymes, and it kind of screws up a lot of things in the body. When fat cells shrink like this, when you fast, then they shrink in the liver, and the cells that are being crowded have room to expand. That's why people talk about, wow, my joints feel better. You have fat cells in your joints, they shrink, and there's not as much pain in your joints. Fat cells that expand in the body push on arteries. That interferes with circulation. When they shrink, your circulation gets better. Fat cells push on nerves. That causes pain. And so when they start shrinking, you notice little aches and pains and problems you have, they actually start going away to a degree. That's because all the fat cells inside of you, 50% of them are inside of you, 50% are subcutaneous under the skin. When they all shrink, everything in the body starts functioning better. There's a lot of things that happen in that sort of environment, and it takes a while for that to happen. It doesn't happen overnight. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking vitamins and minerals. That video later on, the best one I've ever seen, called Vitamania. You can watch that. It's not on YouTube because you have to pay this little thing to download it. The rest of them actually are on YouTube. Last thing on this, then I'm going to wrap it up. Glucose is what our body uses as energy, like gasoline for a car. But we can use 2 other energy systems. When I talk about energy, I talk cells that use the energy. They take it in. We can use ketone bodies. You've heard of ketosis, and we can use fatty acids. That's what cells can take in. Fatty acids have a lot of energy. I'm going to give you the codes here in a minute. The fatty acids have the most ATP molecules per weight or per molecule. So the heart uses the most energy, so it prefers fatty acids. But all the other cells in the body can use glucose or ketone bodies. When glucose level gets low, ketone bodies are made, they're very similar to glucose, they're made by the liver, and they replace glucose to a degree, or the ratio changes. You always have to have some glucose. You always have to have some, because there are certain parts of the body that do require glucose. The liver requires glucose, so you always have to have some. But the more you switch to ketone bodies, the healthier you are, the less disease you have. And when you have time between meals, glucose goes down and ketone bodies go up. That's called ketosis. There's tons of videos on people, big time bodybuilders, people being healthy just by going to what is called the keto diet. And that's fasting for a period of time puts you into a ketone diet. But what you have to keep in mind is this: if you're not used to it and you skip a couple of meals and ketone levels go up and glucose level goes down, your blood chemistry changes. And the first organ to respond to a change in blood chemistry is the brain, because the brain uses the most blood. The brain gets used to everything. And so now you change the ratio and your brain goes, oh, what are you doing? I can't stand this, ketone bodies. It doesn't know how to tell you anything other than through a headache. A headache's telling you something is wrong, some organ, some chemistry, like something's not normal. And remember, the brain gets used to blood chemistry. And if it's not used to it, it's going to give you a headache for a while. Eventually, you can overcome that. You can train the brain rather than the brain train you. Whatever you put in your bloodstream, once again, this is a little bit of a repeat, but you guys are young, you need to know this. Whatever you put in the bloodstream, I'm talking about food, drugs, medicine, anything, whether it's legal or illegal, if you put it in there enough and the brain's not used to it, it's not going to feel as good. You're going to get a headache, you're not going to feel as good. But after a while, your brain gets used to it and now it's normal for you. Somebody says 3 minutes of my time. Yeah, Elizabeth, yeah, you can. So what happens is, let me give you an example, marijuana. I don't think marijuana is really that bad for you. It's just my opinion. It's probably about as bad as smoking, although it may not even be as bad as smoking because you don't smoke 2 packs of marijuana a day. It's not as harmful as they used to say it was. It actually has some medicinal purposes, etc. But the only concern I would have for somebody that uses it all of the time is that your brain is going to get so used to it that when you try to come off of it, you're going to have some withdrawal. You're going to have headaches, not feeling as good, not functioning as good. So that's the main downside of it. As far as the other physical effects, my opinion is just probably minor. I think alcohol is probably worse for you. But then again, if you put alcohol in your system all the time, constantly, then you don't have it in there, then you're going to have massive migraines, etc. If you're not used to drinking much, you probably had this happen. You just have one drink. I'll drink occasionally, but not much. But sometimes when I have a drink, I have a massive headache afterwards. Just a beer, and I'm like a couple hours later, I'm like, God, I get this headache just from a beer. That's because my body's just not used to having it. It doesn't mean the beer was really bad for me. But this is true with glucose level and ketone bodies. And so you got to be real careful about choosing to put something in there so much that you have major withdrawal. And the main thing on that is pain pills, opioids. People that get used to that go through hell with withdrawal. Some of them don't even survive the withdrawal. If you do it for years and put in more and more and more, the withdrawal can be literally, could almost kill you. It is literally that bad. You can watch videos on YouTube of people going through opioid withdrawal. I can tell you, it's really scary. So you got to be real careful about that kind of stuff. All right. So guys, I'm going to give you the last code and then I'm going to end the meeting. Somebody says they have to go, but we're done here. So just once again, the codes are 356, the first one 362, and 453. So what you need to do is, once again, go to the, let me close this. Go to screen share. I'm gonna do screen share with you real quick again, just to show you. Because I'm only gonna give you the extra 5 points for the people that do it tonight. So I'm sharing the screen, whatever course you're in is you will go, I'm in the modules section. We're in week 5. Conference Zoom video quiz number 2, you click that. Right there, you click take the quiz. I think on mine it's just preview. Does it say preview? I don't know. Just says edit. I don't know. But anyway, it's going to ask you the 3 codes. You enter the 3 codes. You'll get all 15 points. It'll say 100%. Then I'm going to add 5 more points. So that doesn't. So 5 out of 20, it'll probably say that's like, what is that? 1/3. It'll probably say 133%. Is it? So let me stop the screen share. Does anybody have any questions on anything? Somebody wanted to stick around, whoever it was. Repeat the 3 codes once again. Okay, 356, 362, 453. So go to modules, take the quiz. Somebody says our first test is on the 24th. Now remember, you have the whole week to take the test. The next week's module opens Sunday at midnight and closes the next Sunday at midnight. Okay? Okay, guys. Bye. So somebody wanted to stick around, you can close out the meeting. I'm going to leave the meeting open. Somebody had a question, I guess. So go ahead and take the quiz, and I will see you at our next meeting. Yeah, Elizabeth, let's see. Okay, so you stick around. Not recorded. Okay. So let's see, Elizabeth, what class are you in? What section?
I'm 162-70.
162-70, Elizabeth Martinez. Okay, you can go ahead and close this. I'll send you a link.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to close the meeting. Okay, go ahead and take your quiz though too.
Okay, thanks.